Hello friends, my name is Jess. Welcome to Books Past Bedtime. Today we are going to be doing my, what month is it? August wrap up. So we can start off with a few stats. In August I read a total of 16 books. Today is the 31st. I am not planning on finishing anything today, but it is possible. If so, I will just include that next month, I guess. So I read 16 books with a total of 5,622 pages. Again, those pages from today are not counted, so it might be a little bit higher. In terms of age range, I read a lot of YA this month, a lot more than usual. I did read 3 middle grades, 9 YA, and 4 adult novels. In terms of format, I listened to 6 audiobooks and I read 10 books physically. I would say this month was pretty heavy on the physical books, and that is kind of not typical for me. I tend to read the most audiobooks, I would find, but I had a lot of time for physical reading this month, which was great. My genres for this month are a little out of whack as well, a little out of the ordinary. I did read 9 books that you could categorize as fantasy. There was a mix in there of like some dystopian, some magical realism kind of stuff, that sort of thing, but as a broad overarching category, 9 of them were fantasy. I read 2 historical fiction books, 3 contemporaries, and 2 thrillers. And I kind of want to read more thrillers in September because I just have really been into them recently. And the ones that I read this month were super good, so hopefully I can find some good ones for next month as well. So let's just jump right into the books I read. So the first couple books I read this month were books that needed to go back to the library. First of those was The Wicker King by Kay Ankrum. This is a story following 2 boys. I believe their names are Jack and August, and they have been friends forever. They are very, very close. Jack actually starts having sort of hallucinations that take place in an alternate dimension, and he believes that in order to get these hallucinations to stop, they have to go on this quest and achieve this goal in this alternative universe. The issue turns out to be a little bit different than Jack just having hallucinations. This is a book about mental health, about codependency, about trauma, and how we use friendships to kind of fill those gaps in our lives. Sometimes they might not be the healthiest, but at the same time, those relationships are valuable and vital. I really, really enjoyed this book. It definitely is a little bit weird, and it reads like whimsical, magical realism, but it's also very hard-hitting and emotional, and I really connected with this book. I really liked it a lot. If you kind of like things that are a little bit out there, a little bit pushing the envelope, I definitely would recommend this to you. I also was kind of hesitant to pick this one up because in a lot of the reviews, they claimed that this book was queer baiting, which personally, no, it's not. Like, the characters in it are queer and the ending is queer, so I don't really know what those reviewers were talking about personally, but if you had heard rumblings of that as well and that was turning you off this book, I definitely would not put a lot of credit into those because I really didn't find that at all in this book, and that is something that I usually look for and that bothers me in books. I thought this was really well done. This was a 5-star book for me and I really, really enjoyed it. The next book I read from the library was not quite so successful, and that was The Fascinators by Andrew Aliopoulos. This is also kind of a magical realism-esque story, but it's more like magic exists in our real world. This book follows this group of 3 friends who have magical powers. I don't know, it's kind of weird because it's like spells that I guess anybody can learn how to do and get better at, but I think people also have an innate ability for magic. I don't know. That was one of my main issues with this book, is that the world wasn't fully developed and the magic system wasn't fully developed. It was kind of confusing, but like I said, this is basically following a group of 3 friends who all have magic. They're in this magic club together at school. I don't remember any of the characters' names because I didn't particularly like this book, but they all are kind of having conflicts their senior year of high school. One of the friends, she is really ambitious and kind of feels penned in by this magic club, feels like her friends aren't taking it as seriously as she is. She really wants to get into this magical college, so she kind of gets herself wrapped up in something that's a little bit darker, kind of putting their lives in danger. Also, another boy in the friend group also gets into some hot water as well. They kind of have to solve all of these moving parts, these conflicts that are going on. I just didn't really love this book. I didn't connect with any of the characters. I didn't think that it was well developed at all, and I didn't come to connect or care about any of the characters enough. And the ending was kind of unsatisfying also. They kind of hinted at this romance between the 2 friends, and that I never really saw why they liked each other or why that was a conflict. I didn't really care about that aspect of the story. And honestly, I didn't really care about any aspect of the story, so even though it had an unsatisfying ending, I didn't really care that much. I gave this one 2 stars. And next, I continued my Harry Potter reread this month with Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban by She Who Must Not Be Named. This one is my favorite in the series. I really, really love this one, especially because Sirius Black is introduced and he is one of the best characters. He is such a good character. I love him so much. And I think this one I like so much because it's the first one where the stakes feel kind of higher, you know, and we're really starting to get into the main thick of the plot with Voldemort. And I did read the illustrated edition of this one, but it is so heavy I do not feel like holding it up. And that was such a great experience as usual. Those copies are so beautiful. Yeah, it's always fun being back in the world of Harry Potter. And also I really just love the storyline with Hermione and the Time Turner. I think it's so fun, and with Buckbeak, and it just makes me so happy that Buckbeak and Sirius escape together, and it just makes my heart warm. I just love this one so much. Definitely my favorite, 5 stars. The next book I finished in August was Full Disclosure by Cameron Garrett. This was the Page Turner Book Club for August, and we had a really great discussion over on Katie's channel. Actually, it was last night from when I'm filming this video. I will link that in the cards up above. Definitely go check that out if you missed it. It was a lot of fun. We had a great discussion. This book unfortunately fell a little flat for me. I ended up rating it 2.5 stars. From an enjoyment standpoint, I didn't really love it. It was written definitely younger. I thought that it would definitely appeal to an audience of maybe like 12 to 18 and be very good for them, but I don't think it really transcended that age group, which I think a successful YA should do. And I thought it was a little bit info dumpy. So this book follows an HIV positive teen, and she is navigating being HIV positive while also kind of experiencing her first relationship and learning about how to have safe and consensual sex and be in an open and honest relationship. There's also a lot of other moving parts in this book, which was one of my main issues with it. I thought it was trying to do too much. It was trying to have this plot line with the HIV, which I think was really important and what should have been the main focus, but then it was also threw in this blackmail kind of plot. There was friend drama, there was family drama. It just didn't have a very good focus, but I did think it was very educational when it comes to HIV. I thought it had a lot of good information in it, even though it was a little bit info dumpy and read kind of like a textbook or a pamphlet, but overall that information was valuable for sure. All of the representation and diversity in this book was very well done. I really enjoyed it. I really appreciated it, and I really appreciated the discussion this text was having with the reader about female sexuality and how to have safe, healthy, and open discussions surrounding sex and sexuality, and I just really appreciated that, and I think we need more of that for sure. The next book I finished in August was New Moon by Stephanie Meyer. I have a full dedicated reading vlog for New Moon if you would like to check that out and hear my full thoughts. Basically, if you didn't know, this is the second book in the Twilight series. In this one, Edward ends up leaving Bella because he feels like Bella would be better off without him, and Bella is very depressed for a while, but then she forms a friendship with Jacob. There's a very dramatic Twilight-esque ending, and it's great. So I definitely really liked this book. Obviously, I love this Twilight series. Will admit it. I'm not ashamed, but I don't think New Moon is as strong of an installment as Twilight is. Especially when I reread Twilight, I really saw how much planning and intricacy went into that story, whereas this one didn't feel like it had those elements. Bella also annoyed me a lot more in this book. I thought she was making some really dumb decisions. Also, this book is so Jacob-centric, and I really do enjoy Jacob's character before he turns into a werewolf. I think he's a really good friend to Bella, and I think he's really there for her when she needs it. But after he turns into this werewolf, he just becomes absolutely insufferable, and I hate him. So though I gave this book 4 stars. Kind of pained me to do so, but I don't think it was a 5-star read, reading it now in 2020. Next, I participated in the Indian Readathon hosted by Nitty Ready Reads. She is my good friend here on BookTube, and the readathon was amazing. I did a dedicated vlog for that too, so definitely go and check that out. The first book though I finished for that readathon was the group book, and that was The Namesake by Jhumpa Lahiri. This is kind of a historical fiction, literary fiction kind of story. Multi-generational. It follows this family as they immigrate from India to America, and it details their struggles of keeping their Indian heritage while thriving in America, and also details the relationships between mother and children and father and children, and how the children differ from their parents and how they go out and make their own way in the world. This was definitely a really interesting and beautiful story. I feel like I learned a lot about Indian culture and the immigrant experience, but at the same time, I don't think this was personally the book for me. I don't tend to like multi-generational stories that take place over a long period of time. It's just something like personal that I have that's just this weird preference of mine. I don't know. So I didn't really vibe with that aspect of the book, and so I found it a little bit boring, and I was ultimately kind of disappointed by the ending. I wanted a little bit more from it. It just kind of fizzled out. So I gave this book 3 stars. I definitely think like it's an objectively good book, but it just wasn't something that I personally connected to a lot. Next, I finished A Burning. I listened to this one on audio, and this one follows 3 main characters. Jeevan, who is a a young girl who gets accused of a terrorist act because of a misguided comment on Facebook, and she gets thrown in jail and sentenced even though they only have circumstantial evidence against her. And then we are also following Lovely, who has Jeevan's alibi because Jeevan was going to the slums to teach her English, and she wasn't associated with the train bombing in any way. She was just going to visit Lovely. And then we're also following PT Sir, who has some political aspirations. He used to be Jeevan's PE teacher, and he actually ends up testifying against her because he has gotten himself involved with this political party that really want Jeevan condemned for this crime. And so in order to catapult himself up the hierarchy, he goes ahead and does this. So this is basically a story about political corruption in India, and it definitely was really powerful. I think it made me feel at least some of the emotions that it was trying to. I definitely was very angry at Jeevan's situation and the fact that she was so mistreated and nobody would listen to her, and she really didn't have a fair trial. It makes me wonder how realistic of a story this is. I'm definitely inspired to look more into the political system of India and learn more about it. And although I think this book had a lot of good to it as well, I thought it was lacking in some aspects. I think I wanted more of an emotional connection to the characters, and while I was definitely mad for Jeevan's situation, I wasn't mad enough. I think that the writing was almost a step removed from the story in such a way that I didn't feel super connected to the characters. I also kind of wanted the characters' lives to intertwine a little bit more than they did. It kind of felt like we were following 3 separate stories instead of one big story. So I think those are the 2 main issues I had with this one, but I did rate it 3 stars. I do think it also is objectively good, and if it sounds interesting to you, definitely check it out, but it wasn't necessarily the book for me either. And then the last book I read for the Indian Readathon was Aru Shah and the End of Time by Roshani Chokshi. And this is a middle grade fantasy, kind of in the vein of Percy Jackson, where our main character, Aru, finds out that she is a demigod. She has to go on a quest to stop time from ending because she lit a lamp in her mother's museum, which released this demon. This was a really fun story. It definitely taught me a lot about Hindu mythology, which I really appreciated. Thought it was a lot of fun to learn about that. I definitely really liked Aru and Minnie as characters. Their adventure was really fun and definitely made me feel kind of like I felt when I first read the Percy Jackson series. I think that was also, though, one of my complaints, is that I thought it was a little bit too similar to Percy Jackson. I kind of wanted a little bit more of a unique story, but at the same time, it was still good, still really fun. It was written a little young. There was some very young humor in it, but overall, I did really enjoy this one. I think I'm going to give it like 3.5, 4 stars. Yeah, I definitely would recommend you check this one out. Then next, I participated in another readathon, and that was the Scallywagathon, hosted and created by Allie over at Hardback Quarter. I also have a dedicated reading vlog for this readathon if you would like to check that out, hear more in-depth thoughts about these books. But the first book I read for this readathon was The Lonely Heart of Maybelle Lane by Kate O'Shaughnessy. This is a middle grade kind of hard-hitting story about this girl named Maybelle Lane who has grown up without a father. One of her hobbies is that she likes to collect sounds, and she actually has this voicemail of her father, so she recognizes his voice when she hears him one day on the radio. And he is announcing that his radio station is hosting this singing competition, so Maybelle rushes to go apply, signs herself up without really thinking through the consequences. But a teacher who is watching Maybelle when her mother goes away decides to take her to the singing competition on a little road trip. This book is so fun. I really liked the road trip aspect for sure. All of the characters in it are really great. Maybelle is adorable and spunky and so fun. The teacher who ends up taking her on this road trip is just my favorite kind of adult character. She just really believes in kids and is just the best possible like adult in a kid's book. I don't even know how to describe her, but this book was so heartwarming and so touching. I really loved this one so much. I gave it 5 stars. If you couldn't tell, it did make me cry at the end, and I really loved it. For this readathon, I also read No Exit by Taylor Adams, which is a thriller, and it follows this girl named Darby who gets snowed in at this rest stop as she's trying to drive home for Christmas break. The plows aren't going to come till morning, so she is stuck there along with like 4 or 5 other people. When she goes outside to try and get cell signal to text her mom and sister, she ends up seeing that one of the cars has a crate in the back with a child in it, and so she has to race the clock and try and figure out, 1, whose car is this? 2, why do they have a child back there? And 3, how is she going to save this child and stop this person? This was really fast-paced. It kept me on the edge of my seat. It really is what I am looking for when I'm looking for a thriller. It is crime-based and exciting. It did have a little bit of gore, which kind of grossed me out. I'm not the biggest fan of gory descriptions, but overall, I did really like this one. It was very nearly my ideal thriller. I did predict a few of the twists, but not all of them, and so I think I'm going to give this one 4.5 stars. Really liked it, really would recommend. And then finally for that readathon, I read Crown of Midnight by Sarah J. Maas. This is the second book in the Throne of Glass series, which follows our main character, Selena Sardathian, who is Ardlan's greatest greatest assassin. She is hired by the king to be his personal assassin, and that's kind of where we start this book. She is kind of being quietly rebellious and not actually killing the people that the king wants her to kill. Instead, she's allowing them to escape and start new lives. So this book is following her as she does that, and also she's trying to figure out why the king is so corrupt and what the rebel movement really means. We also get some character development of Dorian, who I didn't really love the first time I read this book, but he becomes super interesting in this story because he learns that he has magic, and magic does not exist in this world anymore. So he is trying to kind of figure out why he has magic, how to use it, and so he becomes a lot more interesting in this book. So I really liked his character in this one. I also thought Selena became less annoying in this book. She was more focused on what she was doing. Her character was more consistent, and I just thought the plot of this book was better. Like, it was so much more interesting. We really dove into like the fantasy world in this one, and it didn't feel quite so Hunger Games as the last one. It had its own vibe and its own plot. This was probably my most surprising read of the month. I was not expecting it to like it as much as I did, but I actually liked this one enough to give it 5 stars. I don't know who I am. Who am I? This book was honestly so good, and I really cannot wait to pick up the next one now. I just devoured this book. And next, I read 2 books to finish out my taste test video for reading Kirsten's favorites. That video went up last week and was so fun to film. I had 2 books that I had left to read for that video this month, and the first was Hotel on the Corner of Bitter and Sweet by Jamie Ford. I still don't know if I'm saying that in the correct order. I don't know why I can't get this title into my head. Anyway, this is a historical fiction story. It's dual timeline, follows our main character Henry, both back during World War II and in the 80s. Back in the 40s during World War II, our main character Henry, he is Chinese, and his family are really strict Chinese nationalists. His parents really do not like the Japanese. They are for the Japanese internment. Henry has a Japanese friend at school named Keiko, and he just adores her. They are best friends, and so when her family gets shipped off to a Japanese internment camp, it really just destroys him, and he tries to do everything in his power to make her life as comfortable as possible and to save her. And then in the 80s, Henry starts to uncover some of Keiko's things from back in the day, and he really starts to think about her again and wonder where she might be. His wife has recently died, and he's also trying to repair his relationship with his son and his new daughter-in-law. So there's a lot of touching stuff going on in this book. I definitely thought it was really well done. I did enjoy reading it, but ultimately I thought it was kind of slow, and I didn't have the emotional connection or reaction to it that I wanted, especially out of a historical fiction centered around World War II. And so I ended up giving this one 3 stars. If you want to hear more of my thoughts, definitely check out that video where I read Kirsten's favorites. Also for that video, I read A Good Girl's Guide to Murder by Holly Jackson, and unlike Hotel, I absolutely was obsessed with this book. I thought it was so good. This book follows Pip, who for her senior capstone project decides to reinvestigate this murder that happened in her town like 5 years ago, and she just jumps right in investigating this, but then she starts getting these threats, and she knows she's on the right track because somebody wants her to stop digging and not actually figure out what happened to this girl. This book was so good. I listened to this one on audio as well, and I would definitely recommend the audio. It is full cast, full production, sound effects. You feels like you're listening to a podcast or a movie. It is so well done, and this is just a very rich and well-rounded mystery. Feel like you're discovering things along with Pip. There's enough clues and information that like you're trying to piece together what's going on in your head right along with Pip. And while I did guess who the actual killer was, it was kind of just like a crapshoot. I was just like, I have this weird vibe about this person, but there was definitely like not enough clues or reason to suspect that person. I just was like throwing out a random guess, and I was ended up being right, but for the most part I did not see where this book was going at any time, which is amazing in a thriller. For a YA thriller, this was just really good, and I cannot wait to read the second book. This was so good. I would definitely recommend. Honestly, this is one of my new favorites, and it definitely right now is in probably the top 5 of my favorite books so far this year, so I loved this book. And last but not least, this month I did read the Selection series. So I read The Selection, The Elite, and The One. And while I did finish all of these this month, I don't want to tell you my ratings or my thoughts because my reading vlog dedicated to this series is not out yet, so I don't want to spoil it, but definitely be on the lookout for that. I have some things to say. So those are the 16 books that I read in August. I really hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate you being here. All relevant links will be in the description down below. Definitely go check all those out, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.